like to thank EA for sponsoring today's video. What's going on, everybody? My name is C4, and my friends over at EA asked me if I'd be willing to make a franchise guide for beginners. Very start of starting a franchise mode, and we're gonna go run all the way through one full season, so there's not gonna be one aspect of Madden 24 franchise mode that you're not gonna be covered on and on top of and ready to go for. If you already know a lot about Madden, I know a lot of you probably have, feel free to send this video to someone that might be getting back into the game for the first time, or this is their first Madden. I also have a second upload coming tonight, which is going to be my draft guide, my scouting guide, and a couple more advanced franchise tips. But we're going to start right now here today with the baseline, so you guys can understand everything that is Madden 24 franchise mode. Let's get into it. The first thing you need to decide when you load up Madden 24 franchise mode, are you going to do an online or offline franchise? If you plan on being in a multi-user league, you got to go online. If you plan on having a starting point, once they get dropped, we'll just say usually it's like week 10, you'll get that starting point with real NFL stats, you're going to want to go online. If you're looking for maybe a faster sim experience, you probably want to go online. There's still some good in offline. I utilize both of these depending on like what kind of content I'm creating. But in offline franchise mode, if there's ever any server issues, you're gonna be able to access your file. And the big one in an offline franchise mode is you get to save your game to whatever you're playing on, your PlayStation, your Xbox, or your PC. And there's a little bit of like added security, knowing that you are in control of your save file versus an online franchise where your franchise is saved on a cloud. For example's sake, we're going to start a franchise with my beloved Philadelphia Eagles here, and here is the starting point. You're going to have some options right away. Literally, starting point. Are you going to want your franchise to start at the beginning of the preseason? Do you want to start at the beginning of the regular season? Or do you want to do a fantasy draft? Reset the entirety of the NFL and have a free-for-all, very much like fantasy football. New to Madden 24 is actually tools. If you decide to go down that fantasy draft route, you can now decide the draft order, be it standard, like how the NFL does it. The team that picks first in the first round will pick first in the second round, third round, fourth round, etc. Or much like fantasy football, you can set a snake draft. So whatever team picks 32nd in the first round will then have the first overall pick in the second round and alternating going forward. So that's, that's pretty cool. I think that's a nice little improvement there if you decide to do a fantasy draft franchise. You could also change the role of how you want to play your franchise mode. You could be the head coach, you could do a player career, which is different than the superstar mode, or you can control as an owner. Something that is new in Madden 24 is in previous Maddens, you'd have to be the owner if you ever wanted to relocate your franchise mode. That was really like the big reason to control an owner, unless you really do want control over everything that is your franchise mode. But now in Madden 24, you can start the relocation process as a coach, and you also have an option here to use a custom coach. So if you do want to use a coach, but you hate your team's coach, there's plenty of teams out there where the fan base does not like the actual head coach. You can go in here and create a brand new coach. And the last piece of business before you get into starting your franchise mode, you got to get your settings in line. Now, can't really explain to you the best settings, because it's all going to be down to personal preference for a lot of these. But with the idea of this video being for beginners, I'll kind of say how I would set this up if I was playing Madden for the very first time. Now for skill level, I think you would start on rookie or pro. I think for game style, simulation, you could go arcade, but I think simulation would be the best game style to get used to, especially if you haven't played Madden for a minute, or you've never played Madden at all, because eventually long term, if you can get comfortable on sim, that's the style that I would recommend, big picture. Quarter length, make that whatever you want. I personally play on 12-minute quarters, but if you don't have that much time, feel free to set that where you want. Accelerated clock, I would suggest leaving that on, or else the game would kind of drag on. All these other ones here are down to personal preference for your cooldown limits. This one's a good one, and this is going to go off a little bit of a tangent here. Home field advantage. If you don't know what that is, basically, when you are, the stadiums in franchise mode have little abilities that trigger based upon if you're playing well or if the other team's playing well. I like having it on. I feel like it adds a unique challenge to your franchise mode, unless I'm playing on the road and the other team is giving me the squiggly lines. If you see my content, you know how I feel about that. But there is, some people that don't like that. Some people would prefer just to play basic football. They don't like all these additional features. And in Madden 24, they're giving you the choice to be able to control whether or not you want the whole field advantage on or off. And I feel like that is absolutely the direction Madden 24, 25, 26, 27. Every future Madden needs to always go with the idea of letting the user control what they want in franchise mode. I feel like you're going to have people that love the home field advantage. It's on. Great. You're going to have the people that don't like it. they can now turn it off and they're going to be happy. So you're just going to make your fan base and user base that much more satisfied when you give them the options to control how they experience their franchise mode. And I hope that this is like a new standard going forward, but I would suggest leaving that on. Now going into your team settings, this is basically your day-to-day. And if you feel like you want to have complete control of your franchise mode, leave these all manual. If you do not want to, you feel a little overwhelmed, you can pick and choose or set all of them onto auto, and the CPU will control them for you every single week. I would say personally, I like leaving them all on manual for the most part because I like controlling. But you can always, I think, managed practice reps can stay on auto. There's a reason why a lot of these things are set the way they are. Some are on already manual, some are on auto default. I definitely would say turn on the read order depth chart to manual. If not, your depth chart's always going to be resetting, and your lineup's not going to be the way you want it. It's always just kind of like make it your strongest one, which is not always the case because sometimes you want to play your rookies and stuff like that. So I'd actually suggest turning reorder depth chart on to manual. You have auto progress players, auto progress talent. This talents is you're going to earn staff points for your coaching staff. Do you want to personally spend those staff points, or do you want the computer to spend those staff points? Same thing with progress players. As your players grow and develop in the game, well, they're going to go up overall. You get to decide how you spend those overall points. But if you don't want to do either one of those things, you can turn them on to on, and the computer will handle that for you. Now, we have commissioner settings. Now, these are pretty nice. Most of these are new to Madden 24 franchise mode. And if you are a beginner, I think it would be safe to say, start with the trade difficulty down on easy. That way there you can kind of get used to it. You definitely want to get some confidence with the trade system, understanding kind of how the values work in this game. So there's no shame in starting on easy. And then if you want a little bit more of a challenging experience, you can always go back in and modify that just a little bit. Same thing with free agent motivation. If you want to be able to sign whatever you want and not get into bidding wars all the time, if you make it low, you're going to be a lot more of an attractable team, especially if you're on a rebuild team or something like that. Not the best squad. You'll be able to land more guys in free agency if you turn that on low. Again, you can always make that more difficult. You can turn practice squad stealing on's more realistic, but if you want to, stash a bunch of guys on your practice squad, and you don't want the CPU to steal them away from your squad, you can always just toggle this on off. Relocation settings. If you plan on relocating a franchise mode, here would be a quick tip. If you for sure that's how you want to start your franchise mode, toggle this on to everyone. And then when you boot up into your franchise mode, relocate your team and then come back and change it to, disabled or users only. Because if not, then you're going to have the other CPU teams relocating. It might not be what you're looking for. So that would be my little tip there. Your staff talent cost modifier. This is for your coaching staff. They grow and develop in this game as you achieve goals, as you get a bunch of wins and stuff like that. And basically you can spend staff points, just upgrades, XP upgrades, bunch of different little things that you can get in franchise mode. We'll go through that. I think for your first time in a franchise mode, knock it up to fast, because that way there you're going to be able to spend way more points, and you're going to be able to get a good handle on how the staff trees and skills and all that stuff's going to work. And the easier and the more fun that you can have figuring out which trees you like, what abilities you like to buy, which side of the tree you want to spend. There's no harm in knocking out the fast. And then if you're like, whoa, okay, we're getting way too many of these points, you can just knock it down to normal. And that is, that's a little trick for you there. Injuries, do you want them on? Do you want them off? Kind of like a realism thing. We have your draft timer and free agent negotiations. It's just safe to leave those on default for the time being. In your league type settings, I would leave these all to default. Go into dev trait management. Here's a little tip for you. So I think it is as intended to play Madden with breakout scenarios on and dev trait regression on. If you don't know what dev traits are, basically they're going to be things that control the XP that your players earn. And then eventually you're going to get abilities for your players, special Madden abilities. You're going to want those on. I think when they work as intended, it's great. But they give you the option here to control how many of these players you can get. Star Dev, Superstar Dev, and X Factor. I have found the best balance is to max this out. When you max this out, I find that the dev trait regression is the key in this one. Breakout scenarios are awesome. That means when you have a big week with your players, if you have a guy that gets 4 or 5 touchdowns, you're going to have the next week a good chance of him coming to talk to you and saying, hey, I'm ready for another big game. And if you have that big game, they're going to get a Superstar Dev or an X Factor Dev, and they're going to get some brand new abilities. It's awesome. It's one of the funnest things you can do in franchise mode. The dev trait regression is basically the game will decide at the end of the season if your players should keep their abilities. If they didn't have the best of years, it might take a dev trait away from them. And I found in previous Maddens, sometimes that's always not the fairest, and it's kind of overly harsh sometimes when a player on your team loses a dev trait. You might disagree with it. So I found when you max out the X Factor Superstar and Star Dev players, you tend to get a little bit better rolls in terms of the dev trait regression, and more times often than not, you are not having a player that should not absolutely lose a dev trait losing a dev trait. They kind of stay with where they should be, which is great. And I've found the best balance is by maxing all these out. Roster protection, just leave these all default. That's probably the best way to go with it. Once you load up into your franchise mode, you got 4 tabs here: home, news, league, and options. We'll break down each and every one of these quickly. We're not going to take too much time, but just to get you guys a nice little basis of the hub here in franchise mode. So the news hub will start here because home is going to be the important one. We'll save that for last. News hub is pretty much like Twitter. Kind of gives you guys some storylines. When you have like scouting storylines from draft prospects, they'll pop up here. News and trades and stuff like that around the league. Nice little hub to give you a little bit of a sense of realism. We have the league tab. This is where you're going to be able to see the league standings. You're going to be able to see your schedule. You're going to be able to see the stats and awards across the league, which is always something to keep an eye on here. You can go into your player stats, your legacy leaderboard, which essentially is going to be whatever you are in this game, be it a coach or an owner. And as you win games, stuff like that, you're going to be able to kind of climb these leaderboards, and hopefully someday you're going to get up there with like John Madden and Bill Belichick, so on and so forth. You have over here the in-season award tab. This is where you get to see your weekly awards, the yearly awards, and the Pro Bowl. You have your NFL records, which have all the NFL records. This is something that, like, if you do a little bit of a long-term franchise mode, it's always good to see kind of where your players stack up, or if you have an insane game or an insane regular season, this is where you can kind of see where your player lines up in the history books. You're also able to see the career stats here of your entire roster all time, and that obviously goes and gains as you go through years in your franchise mode. And you'll be able to find your coaching stats as everyone now tries to catch up to Big Red here on the all-time wins list. Next tab is the X Factor database. You can use this just every year to kind of see who still has X Factor abilities. You can use it as a scouting report. If I know I'm taking on the Chargers next week and I want to kind of see what are they working with under the hood, I can see exactly how their team lines up, who has abilities, and what their abilities are. So it's always just a nice little scouting tool in your franchise mode. You then have your league transactions tab. This is probably a little bit more important if you're in like a multi-user league. You can kind of see who and what everyone else is kind of up to in your franchise mode. If you're just playing against a computer, it will show, you know, contract signings and retirements at the end of the season. And lastly, you can take a look at the league history. So as you progress through your franchise, it's going to show everything that you've accomplished. Or you can go all the way back in history and be like, wow, 1969, man, Bud Grant, what a year, and Len Dawson, what a year. Next up is the options tab, franchise settings. The league settings are really what we just set, so those should be good for the time being. But again, anytime, especially if you start out maybe on an easier difficulty, you want to bump it up, you'll be able to do so right there in the league settings. We have XP sliders. We also have gameplay sliders. I'll tell you right now, this is something that has been improved in Madden 24. However, I can't sit here with a straight face and tell you what the best sliders are right now. I'm going to be playing on default, exact same that a lot of you guys are going to be. But it usually takes a couple weeks, and eventually there is a very dedicated community in Madden that, like, their passion is getting sliders in franchise mode exactly where they want to be. So anytime there is a really good set of community sliders released, I tend to make content on it. So if you do want to stick around for that, you know, here's your cheesy little plug. Hit the subscribe button, because when there's a really good set of community sliders, I will post them to you guys. And obviously the sliders are usually catered to whatever difficulty you're playing. So you'll be able to find the best rookie, pro, all Madden, all pro difficulty sliders that are going to give you guys a really good gameplay experience. But again, you know, you don't always have to wait for somebody. If you personally are playing your franchise mode and you find that the computer passing is ridiculous, hey, knock it down. I think when I have dabbled a little bit into custom sliders, 5-point increments, it's like a good safe spot. I'm like, all right, 45, let's see how that feels. If it's still too overpowered, knock it down to 40, yada, 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 keep going in 5s. But generally speaking, default's not too bad. I think on the easier difficulties too, default is pretty safe. Maybe once you start jumping up into all pro and all Madden, you're going to want to fine tune these sliders a little bit. But it does take a couple weeks from the launch of the game to get a really good set of community sliders in. But again, as soon as something drops that's worthwhile, I'll let you guys know. Next tab is user settings. This is more so me showing you how to do it. I can't tell you what the best user settings are, but if you want to fine tune your settings, this is where in your franchise mode you are able to do so. So you can set it on your gameplay helpers, how you want to control your passing mechanics. I just run this on default. Your coin toss decisions, you can have you set your accessibility, your visual feedback, your volume control, your game controls, and your graphics here. So obviously I'm on PC right now, so my graphics are going to look a little bit different than what you guys can get on console. So I'm not going to go too far into that, but I think on console you can go for like performance or visual as like your options. Maybe do a little bit of research into that. This is where you can do your volume control. You know, I obviously have to turn off music for copyright reasons, but if you ever need to fine tune that, this is where you do so. And not shots fired there. You know, I'm sure the commentary team does a great job, but I can't remember the last time I didn't have this on 0. Next tab is use your teams. So this would be a little bit different if you're in a multi-user league. You'd be able to see what's going on with everybody else. But the important thing of going into user teams is when you are playing solo dolo, especially if this is your very first time playing a franchise mode, if you make a couple bad trades, you make a couple roster decisions, you release some guys that have a lot of dead salary cap. You want to get that out the books, this is how you do it. You go into your user teams. It only shows me right now control the Philadelphia Eagles. And here is where you can clear all the salary cap penalties, which will make things a little bit easier for you come the offseason or even in season as you're trying to re-sign players. Or if your team's just losing a whole lot of games, you can raise the morale up to 50. Because if your morale drops below 50, your players start taking overall hits, which is never a good thing, especially if you're brand new to the game. Might find that a little harsh. You can demand your release, which is basically just like ends your franchise mode. But retire is an interesting one, because when you want to retire, the easiest way to like explain what retire is and how it's actually practical is, say I want to for sure finish with the Philadelphia Eagles and I want to become the new head coach of the Bears. What you would do is you go create a character. I don't want to do it because it's going to ruin my Eagles franchise here, but you go here to create a new character. You go up to yes. That will retire me as an Eagles coach, and it's going to allow me to pick whatever team I want to become the new head coach for. So if you are in an offline franchise, online franchise, and want to switch teams, more so if you're solo dolo, not so much in a multi-user league, you go to the retire menu, you retire your coach under create a new character, and then you'll be able to start a franchise as the head coach of a new team. Now it's time for the big dog here, the home tab. This is where everything franchise mode happens. We're going to go through each one of these tabs. And I'll write down. First is training camp, which is new to Madden 24. These are the new mini games that if you're watching this video, you know what they are. They're very hyped up this year. They're really fun. I found out like in my first rebuild that I played, I did these every year. Like it made it an extra 3 hours worth of recording the rebuild because I wanted to do each and every one of these every year because the rewards are nice. If you can get a gold medal or even a silver medal in some of these cases, you can end up getting nice XP boosts for your players, skill points to help upgrade their overalls, those rookie snaps. In Madden, when you draft a rookie that has a hidden dev trait, it takes like 500 snaps to unveil what that dev trait's going to be it a star, superstar, X factor. So if you can get gold and you shave 300 off the rookie snap, that's massive because you're going to find your player's dev trait in like more than half the time. So that's always a nice little boost. I will say, just for beginners, this is just got more fun way to practice, I find, because you actually get a reward tied to it, and you could just restart it if you mess up and you like don't even get bronze. It's not the end of the world. Don't back out. Immediately just hit restart and run it again and run it again and run it again. That repetition eventually you should help get up to like at least a bronze, if not into the star category. But training camp, very, very fun. Big time in terms of what you can get out of it once you get comfortable with it for what you're going to be able to get for your roster boost. So definitely don't skip out on that. You have your weekly strategy. This is how you are going to game plan against your opponent each and every week. They give you a lot of information, as you see right now, to understand how to attack your opponent. We got the Ravens here. So you're going to be able to, like, well, here we go. How do you want to stop the Ravens? Well, like to run the football. Well, we are going to try our best to take that away, and we're going to defend the run. And when you pick defend the run, as you can see right here to the left of me, my left, sure, it gives you that boost right there. So I'm going to get better block shed, tackling, pursuit, and play rec if I decide to go with this game plan. Every game plan is going to give you boosts just for that week. So it's going to help you try to take down your opponent. You do this for both offense and defense. The last tab, however, is kind of what I want to focus on, and that is your team profile. Here is where you're getting a whole lot of juicy. We got pause, right? No, you can say that, right? That's not anything. A lot going in here. One is the free practice. If you straight up just want to practice with your team, you could do that here. But here's also where you can set your game plan goals. Game plan goals are very important. It's also very important to make sure you set attainable game plan goals, especially as a new player. Some of these are not going to be easy. But as you can see, if I set for the weekly game plan, allow 2 or less touchdowns, I get 6 green F points. What those are the staff points. Those are the points that are going to allow you to upgrade your head coach, your offensive coordinator, your defensive coordinator, and your, call it, general manager which are going to give you massive boosts in your franchise. I'm going to break those down when we get to it, but right now I'm showing you how to get those points. We're going to show you how to earn them, and then we'll break down how to spend them, and that'll make a lot more sense. But you can set these each and every week for these 4 little tabs here, one for your head coach, OC, and DC. If you just leave it on auto, you might get something like this, where it's passed for 450 yards. You might not have a chance in hell of hitting that one. But if you go in, you might be able to go, 15 first down seems pretty attainable. Obviously, they're scaled. The harder the objective goal, the goal is going to be, you're going to get more stat points. But there's no issue and no harm setting them on the easy attainable ones and just stacking those points, because that is the important thing. Early on, get as many points as you possibly can, and you're just going to be wasting it if you're going with the ones that are really hard, like win by 17 points. If you're going up against like a 90-some team, it's going to be pretty hard, and you're just going to getting 0 points. So it's better to get 4 or 6 points than 0, because when you can finally come time to spend them, you're going to wish that you were able to stack up as many points as you possibly can. The big section here in Team Profile is the focus players, in my opinion. This is where not only do you get now little mini games, which is new to Madden 24, this is just, these players are going to get extra XP every single week. And I always recommend making it your young studs. So I'm the Philadelphia Eagles here. Obviously, I'm going to go Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, our 2 first-round picks. I'm going to go Keely Ringo, because our corner room's a little bit older, and he might be the future of the corner room. So now doing Madden 24, you can hop into a mini game with this given player, and they're very similar to the mini games that you have in the training camp. Just the rewards aren't as much. It's more just tied to the XP, which every little bit of XP helps. But as you can see here, when we start our training, those 3 players, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and Keely Ringo, the Georgia Bulldogs, they're going to get an additional 300 XP every single week just because they're our focus planning. And as you can see, there were 6 slots there. We only had 3 available. You're going to be able to unlock all 6 of those as you spend your staff points. So you're kind of seeing how much more powerful that is. It's going to be an extra 3 players that are getting 300 additional XP. As you can see here, we got Jalen Carter right above the webcam. He got that extra 300 focus XP. We got the same down here a little bit with Nolan Smith Jr. And you got Keely Ringo. And that adds up. Like, I would say on average, the focus trained players get 1 to 2 overall extra versus a non-focus trained player in a given season, assuming that, they're on the right side of 30 and if they got a dev trade or not. It's time when a player gets enough XP to upgrade. You're all going to be able to do that here as well in the home tab. So we're going to take a look at this. We're going to look at DeAndre Swift joining the Philadelphia Eagles, new number 0. And here's how you're going to want to spend your points. You have your archetypes. It's kind of, obviously right now we're just kind of explaining everything, which I'll go to. But the archetypes, I always like, for whatever reason, just go with the scheme fit. Maybe that's more of like a realistic thing. But obviously if you want to make DeAndre Swift for some reason a power back, you can funnel those points into the power back ability. But that is how you spend the points, and every single time a player breaks the threshold. See right underneath DeAndre Swift's rating, it says 9,000 XP. Every time he gets 9,000 XP, goes up an overall point. You then spend the point. This is also a nice little preview of what the player tab looks like. This is where you can take a look at your players' goals on a given week and how they can earn extra XP. So for DeAndre Swift here in the, well, it's not started yet, but you're going to have legacy goals, 1,000 yards in a season, all these little different boosts, which give you some nice XP. And as you get into the regular season, you get your weekly goals and season goals for your player, and they're all just going to reward nice XP. We'll go back here. We'll just go on Jack Driscoll so I can show you guys what the player cards look like when you go look like. These are on every single player in the game. You can take a look at their stats and contracts. You can throw them up on the trade block here. You can straight up manually trade them away. This is where you can release a player, or if you want to edit their number or anything about them, even up to their rating, this is where you're going to be able to do it in the player tab. You can look at their ratings. You can look at their health status. You can look at their progression history, which I like to do at the end of the season, because at the end of the season, some players will get dev trait increases based upon their performance. And this is usually how you can see really what they got awarded for. And lastly, you have the motivations and tags. Motivations are more so for free agents. Like, it shows how desirable the players. Also, would apply for Jack Driscoll's case. He's going to be probably very likely to want to re-sign with my team because we fit his top 3 motivations. And then you get your player tags. The best one of these ones, you have a bunch of different ones in the games. You get trade targets, sometimes you get journeyman. Best ones you get mentor, because if you get mentor tags, which are older players, you get extra XP boosts for every mentor you have in that position. So if I brought Matt Ryan in, he was a popular one last year. Matt Ryan would have the mentor tag. Therefore, I would get an XP boost for all quarterbacks on my squad. Jalen Hurts, more XP the better. So always look for players. If you look at the player tags, don't just ignore it, especially because some of them are very, very valuable. I recommend trying to find some mentors. Now we're going to keep on moving down to the staff tab. Now I can finally explain what those staff points, which by setting your weekly goals, which by adjusting it to fast in the base settings so you can earn a lot of them more quickly, here's how you spend them. This is your coaching staff, your head coach, your offensive coordinator, your defensive coordinator, and kind of view player personnel as like your general manager. This is where you get to spend those stat points you've been earning. And the boosts are very important and very valuable. They are absolutely worth doing. As you can see here, you get a bunch of different trees that you could spend your points on. And much like risk reward, for some trees, I would say for some trees, they don't lock. Most trees, they lock. Once you pick a path, like you can see right here in the offensive development, we went with tight end boost and XP boost for the wide receivers. It locks the other side. So there is some risk reward. You got to decide really how you want to build your coaches. But it's worth doing. It's worth always kind of looking ahead. And there's some very, very valuable ones as you spend the points. After school tutoring is a very important one. Remember, we had those 3 extra training spots. One for Jalen Carter, one for Nolan Smith, one for Keely Ringo. The bottom 3 were locked. Here's how you unlock the bottom 3. There's 3 upgrades. Very expensive with 20 points. If you set it to fast, I believe it gets knocked down to 10 points that it costs. And, just start on the end because, it's especially jumping in for the first time. That's a lot to digest here. There's a lot of different options. Could get a little confused. Could be like, I don't know necessarily what to do. Well, I have an advanced video dropping tonight, and I'll explain which ones I would personally go after. Kind of min-max it here a little bit. But you just get comfortable with it and understand that these are very important. A lot of these ones here, XP gains, they're going to help your team develop faster and get better players quicker. This one's a really good one. The final piece. This is going to make every player on your team will count as a scheme fit during training, which what we just saw when we did our training, all those players earning XP, they're going to get more because players that are scheme fit get more XP. So that's a really nice one. A lot of value there. As you go to your OC here, you can buy upgrades for your running backs or your wide receivers. So there's the gamble. Do you want to have an OC that's better at developing running backs, or do you want one that's better at developing wide receivers? And you have here wide receivers and tight ends, or you could go down quarterback. And I personally would go down quarterback because this is a very, very valuable upgrade. High power, throw power for your quarterback. You max it out, you get +3 quarterback throw power, which is huge. Quarterback throw power is at a premium. It's probably the most premium ability outside of like skill position speed. So definitely, if you're a first-time player and you get to spending your points on the OC, start going down the left-hand side in this one. That's probably going to be your best bet. You got your offensive line one for defense, same kind of thing. It's all give and take. You either want to go to your linebackers or full blitz. This is a really big one as well, going towards just straight up getting upwards of 3 speed to all of your corners. Very overpowered. Definitely go for that tree. But this is how you spend all your points. Definitely don't sleep on it. There's some value here, things that will definitely alter how you play your franchise. Like look down here in player personnel. You get one that's going to eventually go all the way down, so it's not easy to get. But when you get down here, reduce the cost of trading up during the draft. Everyone wants to trade up during the draft because you got to find the really top good player, and you're going to be 10 picks behind, and you want to be able to move up and get that guy. This will help you. You have an upgrade here where scheme fits are going to have an increased interest through free agency. They're going to pick your team because it lines up, which is realistic. You have the last one here, which is really, really valuable, Unlocker. So as you go through the regular season, I will show you this. You have the option to re-sign players on your team before they hit the open market. And sometimes you can just never make the contract work. And they'll go, nah, don't want to re-sign. I'm bouncing. Hit this one. You unlock them. You get an opportunity right before the free agency period opens to give them one more contract offer. Gives you one more swing of things. That is very, very valuable, especially if you have like a disgruntled quarterback that you absolutely cannot lose. Also in this tab is where you can hire and fire your offensive or defensive coordinator. For example, Joseph Wells, I'm sure you're a great guy. We're going to fire you. And here is how you replace him. It's all right here in the same menu. Here are all the available coaches, and I want Nick Gregory. I got a brand new coach. That works out well. Also from this tab, you have formation subs and auto subs. That's a little bit more advanced. I'd leave those default. Team schemes, now this gives you a little bit more flexibility. This is kind of big picture for your squad. A little bit more overpowered last year. Playbooks, man, if you just wanted to, you just make this offensive playbook Tampa Bay and your quarterback would get 60 touchdowns. That's been tuned, which was a big ask here in Madden 24. But here's where you set where you want to play. Because, I mean, obviously you pick a team. You might want to just be a 3-4 right away. So here's where you're going to make your defensive scheme a 3-4. And then I would definitely suggest if you do that, you're going to want to alter your playbook to make sure you get a 3-4 playbook that lines up. Same with the offense. Just make sure whatever you're running here lines up with your scheme so that you have the best harmony possible on your offense and defense while you're playing the game. The Manage Roster tab. There's a lot of juicy things here. We have your NFL rosters. This is how you look at your roster big picture as well as every other roster in the NFL. So you can, this, you know, you want to see, you want to snoop around, you want to see, you know, the draft. How, you know, how are the Rams rookies looking? You can do it this way here. But it's, you know, you can also, it's a nice big picture for how you can look at your own team. But personally, when I want to look at my squad, I like to do so from the Adjust Lineup tab, just because it gives you a little bit better visual of how your team's all lining up. And you can see all the depth traits, and you can make sure, and you can adjust your depth chart here. It's not the best for managing your depth chart, but it usually does the job. Here for my beloved Philadelphia Eagles, you're going to be able to look at the offense, you're going to be able to look at the defense, you're going to be able to look at the special teams, and set up your specialist. Now, here will be an example. Say for my slot wide receiver, I don't want it to be one of these three guys. And you're like, well, how do I change that? I want it to be Devin Allen, the track star for the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, we then have to go to like the third way you can look at your roster, which would be the depth chart tab, which gives you a lot more customization for who and where you want specific players to play. So I would then go in my depth chart tab to the slot wide receiver spot, and where in the other menu you can only see the top three, now I have complete control. So if I want it to be A.J. Brown, or I wanted it down here to be the Olympian Devin Allen, this is how you'd be able to adjust that. Also from this menu, you're going to be able to see the injury report. You're going to be able to trade for players. You're going to be able to decide if you want to re-sign players. You can look at the salaries of your squad. This is not too bad to do, to get a look ahead of who's going to be your impending free agent, especially in, you know, the preseason. You don't know exactly who's going to be out of contract in the year. This way here, you can get a little bit prepared and understand where your team is going to be a little bit light for the upcoming season. You can plan your salary and all that stuff accordingly. Here's also where you're going to be able to go and sign some free agents. Now, the one bummer, and this is a question I always get, and this is obviously a video for EA, but something that, like, I'm just going to answer it now. You have to sign guys to the one-year deal that they give you. There's no real flexibility into adjusting the amount of money that you can offer these players. I don't know why that's necessarily the case. Definitely something I'd like to see changed and altered, because I should be able to offer like league minimum, vet minimum, and all these little different things. But you can only sign all these players to one-year deals, which is, you know, a little annoying, but it is what it is. But here's how you can improve your team via free agency. Lastly, if you don't want to improve it in free agency, you want to make a couple trades, you can go right here to the Trade Center, which is going to give you a couple options for how you want to potentially trade. One is you can look at the trade block. That is going to be where every other team is kind of posting guys that are available. And there's actually some really nice looking quarterbacks here. A lot of fun ones if you want to do like a real deep rebuild. Malik Willis would be really, really fun. Tyler Huntley would be really, really fun. But here is where you can trade for players. And let's just, for argument's sake, to show that I can make a trade, let's trade for Tyler Huntley. Even though I don't need a quarterback whatsoever, we'll get rid of one of these second round picks. That should be enough to get Tyler Huntley. And here's how you successfully take a player off the trade block and land them on your squad. You can also look by upgrade position, which you just straight up choose the position you want to look for. It's not that much different than the trade block. The best feature, I think, is the trade finder. Here is where you can get offers for your players right away. So say if I wanted to get rid of James Bradbury and I wanted to get offers on him, I want to see what the market is saying for James Bradbury. On this player, you would hit Y or triangle or whatever that is on your given console, and it will give you offers from around the league that you can decide, well, do I want to trade James Bradbury for Grady Jarrett? Why don't I get Javon Hargrave back in the building here for the Philadelphia Eagles? But this is also a double-edged sword because it allows you to see what other teams want for their players. So if I wanted to go with a two-headed quarterback attack here with Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields in the same backfield, it's just the inverse of what we just did. You go to Justin Fields and you hit Y to see what the Bears would want to deal, and I could do it for pretty affordable, honestly. And as we keep going down, we have the Manage Team tab. This is where you can upgrade your stadium. There's plenty of teams that, if you're a fan of them, you might not like their stadium. You might want to upgrade it. But more importantly, in this tab, this is how you're going to relocate your franchise mode. I don't want to do it because I just feel like that's a bad omen for the Philadelphia Eagles, but this is how you would do that. And to throw a cheap plug in here, I have a video already dropped breaking down everything Madden 24 relocation. So if you want to go see how the relocation process takes place, you want to see all the different cities, all the different uniforms, all the different teams, go check out my Madden 24 relocation video. The last two options, we have Advanced Week. If you just wanted to sim this game against Baltimore and not play it, you just go immediately right down here to Advanced Week, and it would sim that game and take you to week 2 of the preseason against the Cleveland Browns. play preseason game. These are going to be your options of how you play your franchise mode. You can play the full game, which you control everything. You can play offense only, which means you play on the sticks on the offensive side of the ball, and anytime the defense is on the field, it sims it for you. The inverse of that, if you just want to play the defense only, this will sim the offense. And then we have play the moments, which, you know, for a beginner, I would say that might be a nice way to dip your toes in. It's a little bit of a unique experience if you've never seen it before. I'll give you guys a quick rundown of what that looks like. So the play the moments is kind of like a combination of playing all offense, playing all defense. Basically, as you start in your game, you have the option to play or skip a moment. We'll skip a moment right now. You can kind of see it from this perspective. You can just kind of quickly go through the game. But say I'm getting a little frustrated with, you know, my defense right now. They're doing a pretty good job. I can trust them here. They're holding the Ravens to a field goal, but I'm getting frustrated with my offense. I'm like, I got to stop simming right now. I need to get in, hop on the sticks. Now you can just hop right in, play the moment here. We are 3rd and 5 on the 29. It's a preseason, so we got Marcus Mariota in, Greg Ward, Tyree Cleveland. Let's see what we can do. Can we make some magic happen? Boom. Here we go. Cleveland makes the grab. Glad he didn't get a touchdown because I can show you really what play the moment is. I just played that moment, and now it's going to back right out. You can either continue to stay in on the drive, or you're like, well, that's all I really wanted. Let's go back to just playing the key moments here and let the game kind of finish off. So it's a different way to play Madden, but I think, like, if you're in a crunch time or you just want to kind of quickly play through it, play the moments is what I would recommend. I guess the pause menu when you're in franchise mode is not going to be that much more different than if, like, you were just playing the game. You can challenge plays in here, which is pretty difficult to do. You can go back to the Super Sim. You can look at the stats. You go into coaching. That's going to allow you to see medical center if a player left the game due to injury and you missed it. It's going to let you view your depth chart, make a depth chart adjustments. If you didn't look at the X Factor hub before your game, you could also be able to do that here in game. The last piece of business of the preseason before you get into the regular season, you got to cut your roster. You got to trim it down. It's kind of D-Day here, and, you know, at least it gives you some nice suggestions. Obviously, it tells you, like, what happens with the salary cap and implications if you get rid of the guys, but you can also throw them on your practice squad if you don't want to outright cut them. That way there, you kind of, you know, you basically get a free 10 roster spots to work with of guys that you don't have to necessarily cut. And even though it's not really fun in real life, it's kind of nice, because after 3 big preseason games, the guys that you want to reward, feels good keeping them. The guys that made you frustrated, feels a little good cutting them. You've now completed your first preseason. You're here week 1 of the regular season. This is where, up first, right in the home tab, you can set your season goal. And if you set it real high, there's a chance if you could get fired if you have firing on it. But if not, I think just, again, it's all in the mindset, very similar to what we talked about with your weekly goal of, like, make it something attainable so you can get as many staff points as possible. You think you're going to be not terrible? Maybe go 7 wins, because that way there at the end of the year, if you hit that goal, you're going to get nice 15 staff points, which is going to be enough to buy 1 or 2 little options in your tree. If you think you're going to be dominant, you know, go a little bit more extreme, make the playoffs, go win the Super Bowl. That's a big one, but if you hit on that, you get 50 staff points. You're going to feel pretty good. But I would say for a beginner, go 4-7 and just stack those staff points, man. Here's also when you can decide your draft class. So if you want to use something you've created, you'd be able to use your local file. You want to download off the Madden share. If you're going to be on Xbox, I don't know if I should leak it yet, but it's going to be a good year, I think, to be on Xbox if you like using realistic draft classes, or you could just keep the auto-generated rookies. Now, before you hit anything here, there's a new setting in Madden 24 that you should check out, and that is in your franchise settings. You can now edit the draft class strength. You have to do that before you trigger the draft class here in week 1, but it's going to allow you to control, you know, how strong the draft class is at any and all positions. If you want to go with a cupcake draft class, obviously you can make all these very weak and just see how bad those players are. If you know you're going to need a franchise quarterback, you don't want to mess around with a chance of getting a bad roll where the top quarterback's like a 70 normal dev. Yeah, you're playing by yourself, man. No one's going to judge you. Go up to very strong, have a draft class with a bunch of freak quarterbacks. So make sure you do that week 1. If not, you're going to have to wait till next year and redo it again. So now that we've generated a draft class, here's what I would do. Even before I look at the players that are available, go to your scouts and get them in order. Now, tonight's video, my second video, it's going to be a little bit more advanced. It's also going to be mainly my drafting and scouting guide for Madden 24. I'll go a little bit more in depth for some tips and tricks here, but I'll give you guys just like a Cliff Notes general rule of thumb. For your scouting staff, you're allowed to have 1 3-star scout. That is your top dog. Always make him your national region scout. So he's kind of overlooking all the players. You're allowed 1 2-star scout and 3 1-star scouts. You can hire and fire as many as you want. There's no repercussions whatsoever. So if you want to go in here and get MJD, there's some legends as well, former players, by all means. But I would more so focus on the positional expertises. Now, if you want just the easiest, most basic way to set this up, fire your entire scouting staff. Just do it. Trust me. Fire them, have an entirely clean slate, grab a piece of paper, piece of loose leaf, get a duotang, pen, and go into your region breakdown. This is where it's going to show you the strengths and weaknesses of every single region. And I think the best practice, especially for a beginner, is write down the strengths of every single region and then go into hiring your scouts and get the ones like a Jimmy Walker, our 2-star scout, which lines up twice, both of his expertises with the region that he is in. It's not always going to be perfect, but this is like a very simple way to min-max how much information you're going to scout throughout the season for your draft class. So unless like you really need, for example, Jay Brown here, I really need a left end. And while I may be able to go get a 3-star scout that is wide receiver and corner strength, therefore maximizing it better, sometimes you're going to just straight up want the one position that you need. But generally speaking, if you can min-max the strengths and line it up with your scouts, do it. It's easy. That's easy mode. Now that you have your scouts all lined up, you can take a look at that draft class, get an idea of who's going where. Obviously, we are very, very early in this process, don't have a lot of information, and this will change throughout the year. Players move up, players move down. There'll be stories that drop in that news tab. That's always worth checking every single week, because a lot of times those players that get mentioned in the news stories, got dev traits, are pretty good players, more often than not. But as you can see here, you're going to be able to look at each and every player. It's going to give you their information, their projection, their talent, their completion. That is how much you've scouted of them. And eventually, as you scout more of them, you unlock those 4 abilities that have the question marks right at the end of their tab. You can go in and look at a player. Gives you some notes. Obviously, this will get a little bit more refined. As you scout more information, you get their ratings, their combine, college pro day. Those last 2 come during the off season. But the ratings there, that also comes as you scout. But those are going to be very important that tell who and what that player is made out of. Like, especially when you get a big one here, is quarterbacks. Here's a little tip for you. When you're looking for quarterbacks, what is the most important stat on a quarterback? Throw power. So when you are looking, for example, at the quarterback position, you see the physicals, you're going to want to see a throw power. If it's not showing elite, usually a quarterback I tend to avoid unless you run like a 4-3. That is not the last time we're going to talk about and deal with the draft class here as we go through this season, but we're going to put cap on it right now. You're gonna have these open day keys every single time in this week. You're gonna occasionally get scenarios and stuff like that. It's always worth engaging. We'll do it right now. I don't really think we're gonna get anything too crazy for this. Sometimes it gives you boosts. Sometimes you'll get dev trait scenarios. Like right now, it's like, how do we want to beat the Pats? Well, we're going to need dominating offense. We need Jalen Hurts to play their best, and we're going to need to work on the passing game. So that is going to give us an additional passing goal. We hit that goal, we're going to get some nice little boosts, which sometimes awards you XP, sometimes it awards staff points, sometimes you'll get that. We'll see actually if we can roll one. It's a dev trait scenario for a player, so if they hit that, they'll end up going up dev trait. But you have to interact with it in the home menu. If you're just simming through it and you're just jumping right by it, they won't happen automatically. You have to engage with these little pop-ups that pop up throughout the regular season if you want to maximize all the things you can gain and or potentially lose in your franchise mode. We simmed a couple weeks ahead. We are now here in week 3. This is where you can start looking at mock drafts, kind of who's going where. It's going to change throughout the year. And I'll tell you right now, you're going to want to wait till mock draft 5. That happens right before the draft. That is going to give you a very good idea what the actual draft order is going to be ahead of the draft. So if you want Brandon Davis and you're like, well, I pick at 3, maybe he'll follow me. Wherever he's going and projected to go mock draft 5, that's pretty much where he's going to go. So I like to utilize that more so as like, if I want to trade up for a player, I know whatever mock draft 5 shows, that is how far I'm going to have to jump to try to get a specific player. Here's where also you deal with in-house negotiations. These are your current impending free agents. If you want to re-sign them or not, you do so here. We got DeAndre Swift, we'll do that as an example. It's really nice. Philly's a really good team, so a lot of these players want to stay on the squad. Sometimes the interest meter is not so good, but showing here with DeAndre Swift, you can offer these players a couple presets. You can always do a custom offer and give them whatever you want. That does give you some suggestions here with obviously pros and cons. Like a team-friendly deal is good for you. Maybe not good for the player. Might not be so inclined to sign it. You can go neutral, you can go player-friendly, or you can pretty much go very player-friendly. There's circumstances you'd want to do that. We'll go neutral right now. That's usually the safe bet for players that have a nice green interest meter. They will resign. But let's go to someone that has like 0. We have Greedy Williams here. 0 chance he would accept a neutral. Very unlikely he would accept a player-friendly. But if you go very player-friendly, overpay for him, should be able to And it does make up for like that zero interest. So you got to kind of balance that. Obviously, you got to watch your salary cap. But, you know, I would say more often than not, I would go with the pre-suggested contracts versus, you know, always trying to go with a custom offer. You think you're going to get a lot less issues going with the pre-made contracts. We're at week 3, and it's always at week 3. This is where you can go back to your scouts and set your regional focus scouting. So you can't do it for national. These are just for the West, Central, Northeast, and Southeast. But you can tell what position you really want that scout to focus in on. And if you don't do that, it's always going to default to quarterback. So again, something that is not worth just skipping through it. You got to do it, because if not, I have Jalen Hurts. I don't need to scout quarterback, but these guys are just like default scouting quarterbacks. You're going to get a lot of information you're not going to use. So for Jimmy Walker, he does scout wide receivers, so I'm going to want to go and adjust that to wide receivers, and we're going to be able to get a nice 15% boost throughout the entirety of the season for all the wide receiver prospects in the West region. And then at week 8, you get to set your national scout focus. Exact same process. Don't miss out on this one. This is where you're going to be getting those nice big chunks of information. It's a 25% boost. So I'm going to want to always set this for a nice strength of my scout, which for Jay Brown's case is going to be the defensive ends in every single conference, every region. I'm going to get that nice little boost for. Finally, here's the last little kind of in-season thing I need to show you guys. A breakout scenario. Right now, we had a loss against the Commanders, unfortunately, but we got a breakout scenario for Terrell Edmonds, the strong safety. Always interact with these. If you don't interact with them, the player's not going to do it on himself. So we have Terrell Edmonds here. If we somehow held the Cowboys to less than 200 yards or we hit that goal, he is going to take a jump up in his dev trait. Those are like really the biggest things that can happen, I think, in your franchise mode as it relates to your squad. Hopefully you played it and achieved it. We just simmed this one. We might not get the roll. Sometimes you don't get. Unfortunately, that's a little bit of a bummer. Wish he hit it, but again, I just think the biggest thing is like a lot of people will just keep simming. You're like, I don't want to really do all that stuff, but you don't get any of this. It's like it'll trigger. Like Terrell Edmonds will be like, hey, I'm ready for a dev trait, but if you don't interact and go through this process, you're not going to just automatically get it. You have to like prompt it and get it going. So just there's a tip: don't miss out on potential dev traits by just skipping through everything. Now we're here at season's end. Unfortunately, we didn't make the playoffs. Dallas went to the. I'll tell you right now, if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, you're gonna love Madden 24 franchise mode because you guys are very overpowered in the franchise mode. But hey, I'm sorry, it's just I'm an Eagles fan. They didn't win, which makes you feel all right. But you can always get a nice little recap there. You can look at your retirements right here at season before the offseason begins. Which for me here in Philadelphia, I'm gonna guess Brandon Graham retired and Lane Johnson. That is a pretty bad roll there. All things considered, that's gonna be really tough to replace those guys right away. It's always a nice time, too, at this point. This is when I primarily utilize the stats and awards menu, just to kind of see how everyone's stacked up at the end of the season, especially when I'm doing a rebuild and I'm doing heavy sim. I'm not playing from a week-to-week basis. Not the best year out of Jalen Hurts. Devontae Smith had a nice season, so you kind of just see how everyone played. You can also look around the league and get an idea how everyone else played, especially if you have an idea and a line on a potential free agent. You can see what they did during the season and get excited about it. Another thing you could do at this point is when you go down to adjust lineup, I like using this to get a big picture. You can see if your player's gone up or down dev trait. We left dev trait regression on. So taking a look at this in terms of dev trait, I don't know if we would have lost anybody, which is pretty decent, but that, you'll see, right? Some guys will be like, Slay would have been an X factor. Didn't have the best year. Sometimes it happens with age. He's getting up there a little bit. Now we know from this that he is down to superstar. Those changes, be it a gain or a regression, happens here at the Super Bowl. Actually, it may happen just after the Pro Bowl, but it's always just safe at this point, right before. Just double check your roster and see who may have gone up or down a dev trait. Now you're in the pre-free agency phase, and hopefully you've done your business already during the regular season. You're not really waiting last minute, but something that has changed is now here is where you pick up the 5th-year option for your potential rookie players that are still on the rookie contract. Sometimes you're going to want to decline it if they're not the best player. If not, most likely you want to pick it up. In the case of Devontae Smith, who is an awesome player, you definitely want to pick up his 5th-year option. Now it's time to get into free agency. Now, when you look at free agency, especially if you've never played Madden before, it might look a little daunting. There's a lot of information, so I'm going to try to simplify it as best as I can. There are 3 stages of free agency. Kind of view it as 3 days. You sim to each day. Every day you have so many players that you can potentially sign. Day 1 right now, we can only have up to 5 active negotiations. So that way, it just kind of prevents you from trying to sign everybody right away. I think it might gotta be more beneficial if you're in like a multi-user league. So you have like the one team that was tanking that has like $1 trillion salary cap. You can't just sign everyone right away. So we're gonna try to replace Lane Johnson here, and it's similar to signing the players in season on your own squad. You're gonna have interest meters. They're gonna be based off of your motivations. But here you're gonna want to be a little bit more aggressive with your offers. You still have like the pre-made offers. You can go neutral or a custom offer if you want, but you're competing against other teams for a player. So it's always worth, I would say if you're really interested in a player, going player friendly or very player friendly, at least in day one. Maybe we get into day 2, day 3, some of the lower rated free agents. You can risk there a little bit, but like I need a Lane Johnson replacement. Mekhi Becton has that superstar dev, so I'm gonna go very player friendly offer. Now, like that offer, you can do that 4 more times and have 5 active negotiations. Now, still in this stage, I want to see what Mekhi Becton's thinking. He has some offers there, Jets, Texans. So you have this tab. That's your evaluation period. So this is 0 to 3. And on the bottom of the screen, you do so by clicking, I think it's the right stick. Easiest way to, or it's left stick. Easiest way to kind of explain this is like, this is you nagging the player's agent. If you're trying to like apply this to a real world, you're like, hey, see, you got some offers there. Click the right stick in. This is you saying, are you going to take ours? And then he gets back to you and says he will. So now that I've signed that, I've used one of my evaluation periods, one of my nag the agents, I have 5 still active negotiations that I can have. But really, it's all about the evaluation period. So if I got another, just for an example here, we'll go Austin Jackson, and he was another guy that didn't want to sign right away. As soon as I used up all 3 of those evaluation periods, I'd have to go to the next day. Like, that's pretty much when you would move on, is once you use all 3 evaluation periods, go to stage 2 of free agency, try your luck again, trying to get your roster out, then go to stage 3, yada, yada, yada. The evaluation period is probably the most important thing. Once you use all 3, you pretty much have to go to the next day. It's a kind of confusing thing to explain. If you need more elaboration, feel free to let me know in the comment section below, but I think it's, I think I did an all right job. So as we continue throughout the offseason here, for all free agents going on, you're going to be getting more information about your draft class here now as the Pro Day and Combine comes to fruition. So now you're going to see from where we were, top wide receiver, we now have 95% scouted on him. We have a lot more information. All those attributes have been unlocked. And now we can take a look at the Combine and what he did at the Pro Day, how he is in terms of an athlete. Now, second video that's going to be uploaded a little bit later on, the more advanced scouting draft guide, franchise tips. I'm going to kind of break down what you want to look for by every single position. So I'm going to give you an absolute advantage on how to scout, how to dominate your drafts if it's just you by yourself, solo, dolo, in a rebuild. Or if you're in a multi-user league, you definitely do watch that video coming out tonight. You're going to have a massive advantage in your franchise modes. But it's always worth, once you see this, go look, start seeing who's kind of fitting the parameters, who tested well, who's not testing well, and get your draft board set. How to set your draft boards. Well, now that we have a lot more information, you can do this throughout the regular season, obviously, as you find players that, like, that's a guy that I want. But there's no harm in just waiting till the end once you have all the information and doing it all at once. Some of the people like to study every day of the week. Other people like to study like 18 hours the last day before the exam. So, again, different strokes, different folks. But here we go. And as we are looking for a quarterback, we'll just say right now, Andrew Hood. That's the guy that I look for. Jalen Hurts did not have a good year. I need a new quarterback. So how do you want to set your draft board? If you know this is the guy you want to be interested in, hit the Y button, adds a little heart to this player. You can do it through all these different positions. Like we got, we definitely want to show love to the fullback here. And then when come draft time, you don't have to just go through all these single players. You're going to have at least something in terms of like a little collection of the guys that are your favorite players, and you can just kind of follow this board as the draft goes through it. And I always recommend kind of doing that so you're not, especially in a multi-user league, you're not burning the clock. You're not taking the full 2 minutes every single time. Set your favorites board up, people. Do it. The last piece of business before we get into the draft itself, we have an option here for private workouts. This is going to give you 3 opportunities to get more information about players. And I find like that's always most beneficial when you get these 95ers. We have Gordon Robinson, 95%. He's going to be one of them. We have Jack Powell, 95%. That'll be another one. Because when you get a player 100% scouted, it gives you their talent. Talent is something that you can always trust. Sometimes you have busts. First round projection, he might be a 3rd round talent. And you don't want to be gambling that guy. You don't want to be the guy with egg on your face, grabbing that guy. So When you get the 100%, it gives you the 2 talents, so that way there you can, especially in the first round, make sure you are making the right selection. So when you have a couple cases where it's 95%, you're so close to knowing what that player is looking like. When you get these 3 extra private workouts, we're going to select them here. We have Robertson, Powell, and Hartwell. You are going to be able to get that last little bump of information to get them 100% scouted, and you can get their true round value and potential. Also at this time, you get Mock Draft 5. And as I stated before, this is almost a lock to be the order that things go in. Something that I really want to see come in Madden some point is I want to see like aggressive CPU teams here. I want to see the Raiders CPU trade up to the first overall pick and just destroy this draft board and make, like, you know, make the draft as unpredictable as in real life. But in the state of Madden where it is right now, this is a good tool to understand that if I want Gordon Robertson, I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, I can't be like, well, maybe he'll fall to 6 or 7. He's going to 3. So if I want Gordon Robertson, I need to either find a trade out with the Bears or trade up in front of the Bears to secure his services. So like, while it is not, not perfect by any means, you could definitely still utilize Mock Draft 5 to give you an idea of where players are going to be going. To carry on to the private training, now look, I have that Gordon Robertson went from 95% to now he's 100%. I know he's a top 5 talent. Jack Powell, first, second round talent. See, now I'm not going to be as, for sure, a lock to draft a Jack Powell. That is the added value. And look, now we also got that with Hartwell here. First, second round talent. You get a clear picture of your players. And the reason why you just want to emphasize that is like a lot of these little things, especially if you're brand new, you're just going to be like probably just simming. You're just going to be going week to week. You might not be looking at every single tab. Even though there's a lot of value in looking and taking advantage of everything that the franchise mode throws at you. That, like, just something as little as this, I can make a much more clear decision whether or not I want to trade up for a specific player, or it could be a tiebreaker between specific players going from a 95 to 100%. And now it is draft day. It's the last big part of your offseason before you're ready to roll right back into a preseason. So I always think, especially for beginners, just pause the draft. Don't put yourself in any crunch time. Don't want to make mistakes. Don't want to panic. I've done it in my own videos. Forget to hit the pause button, and just my pick goes right by. It's not the best look, but the big things, one, you can always, at this point, look at your roster. Maybe get a good idea of what positions, like maybe you're just like you kind of blank a little bit, or you want just a nice fresh reminder of like, where do I need to go in this draft? Like if I was Philly, I need Kelsey retired. When did he retired? There's also stages to the retirements. Always check every time you sim a week the next stage of retirements. Kelsey retired, Lane Johnson retired. I need to replace my offensive line. So this is nice, just a little reminder. You can always come in and out as long as you pause your draft to see kind of how your team is stacking up, what picks you need to. If you want to trade, if I wanted to trade up for this first overall pick, I don't know if they'll give me an offer, but here's where you do that as well. You'd go in here. I think the easiest way would be to go to Trade Finder, especially if I want to trade up with that #1 spot with the Bucks. I don't know if it's going to be for sale. It probably won't be. And their salary cap's not in a great spot. But I would select that first overall pick. And you hit Y, much like the other Trade Finder. Oh, they actually want something. So there you go. They want 3 firsts and 3 seconds. That's improved from Madden 23. That's okay. Well, there you go. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to make that deal. And just like that, the Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock. Howie Roseman being an absolute wizard yet again. #1 overall selection, because along our way scouting, this guy here, Gordon Robertson. We know that if we pair him with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, it's going to be absolutely unstoppable. We know that this is a can't-miss player, a generational type talent. So that is who we're going to be selecting here. And boom, pretty awesome. Hidden dev trait, flexing on him right away. Power move coming in right away with Devontae Smith's jersey. But yeah, there you go. That's how you draft. That's how you trade during the draft. It's pretty straightforward, I think. I don't know if there's any more I need to cover in regards to the draft. After you make your pick, unless you plan on trading, we have a ways to go. We don't pick to the 4th round again, so it's usually recommended just skip to your next selection. You can go pick a player. What else could I break down for the draft? Well, this is where, remember I told you to set your favorites? Right now, if you're just going by position, like, well, that's a lot. There's a lot of guys here that don't know. Well, if you kind of took your time and set your favorite board, you'd have just a nice collection of every single position that you want to look for. Again, just to plug we still have Carlos Peters here, ironically enough. Watch my video that's coming out tonight if you want just the best tips and tricks on how to draft players. I'm going to show you guys to tell every single position how I draft very well in my rebuilds. If you've never watched my rebuilds before, pretty good at it for the most part. A lot of trends, a lot of themes, a lot of tells for certain specific players. But obviously that's a little bit more on the advanced end, so you can check that out a little bit later. But generally speaking, yeah, drafting is pretty simple, especially if you put the work in. You're going to be able to go off the players that you've been scouting all year long, and you're going to be able to go off your draft board. And hopefully, you watch this, you understand how to draft, you watch the next video, find out how to draft the good players, and you start dominating your drafts. You start dominating your franchise, and you have a 99 Super Bowl winning team before you know it. Now that you've completed the draft, go look at the draft recap. Even though you just made all these picks, now you're going to have a little bit more information available. You're going to know all your players' overalls. And Gordon Robertson, incredibly, in 81 hidden dive. That is a top-tier pick. There's no other way to kind of break that one down. You can snoop around. You can look at the entirety of the NFL at this spot and just see who the top player was in the draft class. And we got tied for the #1 best player in the draft class. You can snoop around the division, see just what the Commanders doing. Okay, well, they had an insane draft class, getting 4 70+ players. Dallas had a pretty decent draft class. What about the Giants? Pretty solid draft class for the Giants as well. They got Hartwell, a guy that we scouted. So this is always a good spot to take a look at. Take a deep breath, understand, get a lay of the land, who did what, and also feel really good about your draft class. Again, to plug the video, watch my video on how to draft really, really well, and you're always going to be admiring your own draft class because you can have a bunch of 80s and 70s and X Factors and superstars. Then from that, you advance to week 1 of the preseason. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has completed the circle. This is and has been the ultimate guide for beginners for Madden 24 franchise mode. I hope you learned something if you're a brand new player. If you're a vet, if you're a seasoned vet, send it to someone that is getting back into franchise mode for the very first time. And I hope you learned something, man. If there's anything I didn't go over, if there's something that I missed that you're like, I still don't understand what's franchise mode, don't hesitate at all. Let me know in the comment section below. I love to help you guys out here so you guys can get the most out of your Madden 24 franchise experience. It's a mode that's very near and dear to my heart. I want everybody to enjoy it. I want it to become the best staple S-tier mode in Madden. Because it deserves to, because it is the funnest mode, in my opinion, in this game. So, that'll do it for me today, guys. Again, plug in a future video if you want a little bit more advanced tips, more so a draft and scouting guide. That's going to be coming up tonight, sponsored by EA. Great content coming that way. Thank you very much for watching this video. If it's your first time stopping by, you learned something here today, hit that subscribe button. The train is getting ready to leave the station here for Madden 24. We're trying to make it a big, big, big year on the channel. So all those likes, all those subscribes, all those comments go a long way in helping my channel with the YouTube robots. Thank you guys for hanging out with me for about an hour here. Very much appreciate it. And I'll see you guys back in the next one. Till then, it's your boy C4 saying peace out. Love ya. Have a good one.